bring in Dave Keating to react from Brussels. Dave, we've heard there from Estonia's foreign minister about a strong reaction. Estonia has already triggered Article 4, which means NATO consultations, similar to what Poland did recently. How do you react to that statement?
Yeah, I mean, that triggering of Article 4 is significant because, as you mentioned, Poland did the same thing when those Russian drones went into Polish airspace earlier this month. Now, Article 4 is, of course, not the famous Article 5, which requires NATO countries to come to each other's defense. It just means consultations that will take place here in Brussels, I'm told probably on Monday. But we've had some pretty strong responses to this latest incursion. You know, these incursions are not so unusual. Already there were 4 of these into Estonia's airspace earlier this year. However, it comes in the context of this rapid amount of really serious incursions that lasted a very long time. And of course, following those Russian drones, 19 of them came into Poland's airspace during the entire course of the night. Now, these weren't drones. These were fighter jets, MiG-31s to be precise, which are capable of carrying hypersonic missiles. Now, a couple of F-35 jets from Italy were scrambled to intercept them. The jets were there in Estonia, not in Italy, but that's part of NATO's defenses that exist already on that eastern flank. A NATO spokesperson said tonight that this is yet another example of reckless Russian behavior, but it's also an example of NATO's ability to respond. And as you mentioned, the EU's foreign minister, who herself happens to be a former prime minister of Estonia, Kaja Kallas, called this an extremely dangerous provocation. So really, there's been strong reaction here. We'll see if there's any more after they meet on Monday.
Dave, this is all strong verbal reaction, but as we've alluded to, this is not the first time. In fact, 3 separate occasions, Russian aircraft or drones have entered into European and NATO space in particular over the last month. So Poland and Romania, now Estonia. With Poland, they were Dutch fighter jets which were scrambled. But what can NATO really do to step up the pressure on Moscow?
Well, already before today's incursion, earlier today, EU ministers adopted new sanctions on Russia, which President Ursula von der Leyen said were partially due to that incursion by Russia in Poland. That's targeting Russian energy and financial transactions. But perhaps more importantly, NATO has now adopted this Eastern Sentry mission. That also went into effect today before this latest incursion. That's an update on the existing Baltic Sentry mission. That's actually the context in which those Italian jets were already in Estonia. This would be a major increase of those eastern forces that would bring new planes, ships, and ground-to-air missile defense systems. Now, already that started today, and we've already had equipment donated by Denmark, France, Britain, and Germany. So that is being called by NATO an entirely new defense design.